A sad point for Boston over the holidays was the passing of a community leader and former city councilor, Chuck Turner. He shaped the agenda for community advancement in Boston long before he joined the council. He'll be honored tomorrow in a tribute by many people, including our guest and former colleague on the city council, Charles Yancey. Thank you very much for being with us, Councilor.
Well, Chris, thanks for having me and for honoring a great man, Chuck Turner. And I predict that history is going to treat Chuck Turner very kindly. He made a profound impact on the city of Boston ever since he arrived in the mid-'60s as a student at Harvard University. I first met him in 1969 when I was a student at Tufts University, and we were challenging the hiring practices of Tufts University. He provided some help from the community in that effort, and we were very successful. Back in 1969, more than 50 years ago. I then worked with Chuck with a community development corporation called Circle Venture Capital Fund, where we developed a 2-story office building, and Chuck was on the board of directors of CVCS. Later, of course, everyone knows Chuck was elected to the Boston City Council in 1999. And he and I had a great partnership. And I have to reflect, I've worked with a lot of great people, and including mayors, over my tenure on the city council, more than 30 years. And Chuck was the strongest partner that I had during that tenure. And I worked with dozens, if not hundreds, of elected officials, and he stands out.
Well, if you go back about 50 years ago, when they were going to be building this highway through the heart of the city, in those days we thought it was normal that you would displace people around the neighborhoods that lived near it. You'd have a lot of construction going on, and they wouldn't get the jobs. And Chuck said, hey, wait a minute. I mean, what about how important it was for him to stand up and do that?
It just exemplified the fact that one person can make a difference. Chuck was a very strong organizer, a very strong communicator, a great intellect, but he never lost sight of the prize of true equality and justice. And he championed those who didn't really have a strong voice in the public or the private sector, and he was pivotal in that effort to stop the Southwest Corridor Project, which cut a wide swath throughout the city of Boston, predominantly in areas of people of color, but also impacting people in Jamaica Plain, in Hyde Park, and other parts of the city. So he helped build that coalition that said no to that highway. And as a direct result of that effort, we now have Roxbury Community College. We now have the Madison Park housing development. We even have the other educational institutions in that area, directly because Chuck stood up, organized people, and created positive change.
What about his role in the Boston resident job policy? And this is not just jobs for people of one race or one gender. This is for people from the city.
He played a key role back in the late 70s. Working with the Kevin White administration and later the Flynn administration to establish the Boston Jobs Residency Ordinance, which benefited people of all races. It says Boston Jobs for Boston residents. And many people would be surprised to realize that even today, the vast majority of the highest paid officials within city government don't live in the city of Boston. So his efforts back in the 70s and 80s and 90s into this century are still very relevant, because very often if you analyze where the contracts go, the billions of dollars in contracts that the city lets every year, the vast majority of those dollars go to people who don't live in the city of Boston. He sought to correct that inequity, and much work needs to be done, but Chuck laid the foundation for everyone in the city of Boston, and convince at least the legislators in the city of Boston to say preference should be given to people who live here after all. It's the Boston residents who are paying the bulk of the taxes that run city government, and government should be functioning primarily for the people in the city of Boston.
Now, there will be some people who might be looking at him through the lens of what's happened going back about 12 years with his legal problems, but if you put things in balance, what should people be taking away?
Well, as I said at the beginning, history is going to treat Chuck Turner very kindly and generously, because Chuck promoted positive change. He promoted justice for all of humanity. And the mere fact that the federal government and others conspired to get him out of office, they were successful in that effort. But it does not overshadow the work that Chuck did, not for himself, but for others. And Chuck was not unique, quite frankly, in having to serve some time. We have a room in Boston City Hall named the James Michael Curley room. And everyone knows James Michael Curley spent a lot of time in jail for doing crimes far more serious than what Councilor Turner was accused of.
Let alone what's involved in the impeachment proceedings. But let me come back to tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to be accentuating the positive, his contribution. You've got an event at Roxbury Community College, and tell us how that's going to play out. Well,
first of all, I hope that you have a wide audience this afternoon and this evening to encourage everyone to come to the Media Arts Building by 10 a.m. tomorrow, Thursday morning, to celebrate someone who sacrificed ultimately for all the people of Boston. Chuck was very instrumental in helping to lead the way for the establishment of Roxbury Community College. Without Chuck, much of my legislative success on the City Council would not have happened. And I believe that tomorrow is an opportunity for people to say thank you to Chuck Turner, but also to indicate to his family, particularly his beautiful and committed wife, Terry, that we appreciate the sacrifice that they made, and we want to thank the Turner family for giving Boston so much, and hopefully begin the process of rectifying some serious mistakes which were made during Councilor Turner's last day on the City Council. But that did not weaken his spirit. That did not discourage him from championing the cause for human rights and justice, not only in the city of Boston, but throughout the world.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
City Councilor Charles Yancey.